changes that will occur, and they want to do all of that together. So,
okay.
Yes.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. It's all thanks to your efforts and the work that you've been doing by throwing the light on the work we do in Parliament.
And this morning, and whenever the issue of the Bank of Ghana governor comes up, and whenever the issue of the finance minister comes up, I remember that, in fact, as far back as 2018, we had conversations on which we had raised alarm about the two and the direction they were going. Your party held a press conference yesterday addressed by a leader in Parliament. They are calling for the resignation of the governor of the Bank of Ghana. I'm guessing this is something you endorse fully, right?
Yeah, first I want to congratulate my leader, Honorable Kesola Atufosin. He, together with our National Communication Officer, Sami Jemfi, a very hard-working young man, for the work they did yesterday. Parliament is on recess, and most of our colleagues are already in the constituency, but they managed to put together a very strong position on this matter, and I can only congratulate them. And they give them the assurance that we all support them and will continue to lend the support for the good of our country. The Bank of Ghana has been the most opaque institution that has created so many challenges and mess in our country. We need to put the spotlight on the Bank of Ghana. It operates as if it's an island on its own, and they have misinterpreted the concept of autonomy and constitutional creation to mean that it is an institution that is above the laws of our country. No. If you are set up by a constitution, it is a reason when they say that the constitution creates an institution, we must now go to the specifics of how that institution should be created in law. And that is how we then pass a law known as the Bank of Ghana Act to bring that constitutional provision to reality. So when that act is now passed, we don't stay with the general provision that you have been created by the Constitution. You stay with the law that provides the specifics as to how we operationalize that constitutional provision. And when you decide to disrespect that law, you cannot resort to the Constitution and say that because of the Constitution, you are independent and nobody should question you. We've passed a law, and we have very good reasons why the Bank of Ghana must operate in a certain way. So when your law says that you cannot just print money and give them to government, particularly when you as an institution has developed a framework that you want to use to manage inflation, to manage interest rates, and to manage the depreciation of the currency, which we call the inflationary targeting framework. And that inflationary targeting frameworks identify what we call fiscal dominance as a major problem that you must cure. And when we say fiscal dominance, we're talking about a situation where the Bank of Ghana allows itself to be ruled by the executive. When the fiscal, the budget itself is essentially heavily dependent on the monetary, it's dependent on the Bank of Ghana, then we say that there is dominance of fiscal policy over monetary policy, in which case monetary policy will never be optimal unless there are serious adjustments in the fiscal in order to complement monetary policy. We don't want that, and we know that from our inflation targeting framework, anytime that happens, it creates pressure on inflation. Inflation goes up, interest rate goes up, depreciation of the currency is enhanced, and in the end, we injure the economy, and the economy is dislocated. So because of that, make sure that you rein in fiscal dominance over monetary policy. This is you, Bank of Ghana, developing and implementing your inflationary targeting framework. As a matter of fact, under the ECF agreement that we had in 2015, the IMF wanted Ghana to implement a zero financing arrangement because at the time, The Bank of Ghana Act itself stipulated that the bank can give to government up to 10% of the previous year's revenue of government. The IMF said no. We should put it to zero in order to accelerate the pace of deceleration of inflation, so that inflation can come down faster and so that we can anchor inflation expectations going forward and have a proper inflation targeting framework that is dependent on this reining in of fiscal dominance. But when we were preparing the law, the two parties, the NPP and the NDC, at the time said no, it will be detrimental to our country, and that any government will find it extremely difficult to manage this country with a zero financing arrangement enshrined in law. I remember the venerable late Dr. Kotose speak eloquently about the fact that yes, we need to bring down inflation. We need to ensure that we comply with the IMF program. But no, 0% will be very difficult. And so we should push it to 5%. And that is how the law was amended to 5%. Now you go ahead and you give more than, in some instances, over 100% of previous year's revenue to government by printing of money, throwing away the memorandum of understanding that was signed between the government of Ghana and the Bank of Ghana to observe zero financing. And, Senator, I want the people of Ghana to know that in 2016, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and Setekwe managed this economy with zero financing from the Bank of Ghana. Zero financing from the Bank of Ghana, strictly in compliance with the ECF arrangement. And there's good reason. Check all the period from 2016 to 2017, 18, 19, that we were having consistent single-digit inflation, that consistently interest rates were low, that consistently the CD was stable, was all due to the fact that we are observing the zero financing of government under the ECF arrangement. That should tell you that there is good reason and there's a scientific evidence to show that if you rein in fiscal dominance, you are able to manage the development of prices in the economy. Fast forward, the IMF leaves. Dr. Addison throws away the memorandum of understanding between the government of Ghana and the Bank of Ghana and start printing money and throwing it into the economy. Because don't forget, the head of the economic management team has told the people of Ghana that he worked at the Bank of Ghana and the money is there. That was the money Baumia was referring to, printing money. He worked at the Bank of Ghana. Oh, you don't remember that?
I remember that, but
And the money is there. You remember?
Yes.
Are you not surprised that the money is the one they were printing?
Your analogy was what shocked me, that you are saying that it is the printing of the money that he was talking about.
That was what he was talking about, because now we have come to know that he was printing of the money. And I said it. If managing an economy is just printing money, then we must as well just buy money printing machine and give it to the finance minister. Buy another printing machine, give it to the governor. In fact, let's even buy one and just go and put it in the office of Dr. Mahmoud Baumia. Let them be printing. If that's how you manage an economy. But this man came and told us that the money is there at the Bank of Ghana. He worked there. And then we just realized that was the money he was referring to, printing money. Are you a Yahoo boy? Then he just be printing money, printing money, printing money. And when you alert them, they will write a long essay. You remember at some point when I raised this issue that they had given close to 79 billion to government. They denied. When the auditors went there, it was 80.8 billion Ghana cedis that they had printed and given it to government. And now the implication of this is that as a result of that printing of money and throwing into the economy, we dislocated Bank of Ghana's own inflation targeting framework, which says that we must rein in fiscal dominance over monetary policy. They threw it out. and printed money. The end result is that we had inflation of 54%. The cedi depreciated by 54%. Government itself was borrowing on a short-term 91-day treasury bill at 36%. So all the woes of our economy is traced to what they thought was cheap money. There is no free lunch. So that is where the problem started. And they denied. When the auditors went there and came back, in addition to the printing of money, they returned to say that the Bank of Ghana itself is bankrupt.
Radio Gold.
The Bank of Ghana is bankrupt. The law we passed said that by 31st March, Bank of Ghana should publish its annual financial statements and reports and gazette the same every 15 days of its balance sheet and assets. You remember in July, I raised an alarm that it's been 4 months now. Bank of Ghana has not published. And I dared Addison that if he does not publish immediately, I will drag him to Parliament. He came out to say that, they wrote to the Minister of Finance to give them an extension. And I asked him, Dr. Addison, are you governed by an act of finance minister or an act of parliament? The powers that you are asking from the finance minister, he doesn't have them. He doesn't have the power to give a special dispensation on an act of parliament. And that you are supposed to be independent of the finance ministry. And you keep eroding your independence by going to the finance minister to look for powers that he doesn't have. If tomorrow he tells you to take a haircut, what will you say? The next day, whereas the DDEP, everybody suffered a haircut on interest and coupons, Bank of Ghana alone said they suffered a loss, a haircut on their principal. How come everybody refused to take a haircut on the principal? But you alone, you did. But you see, Senna, what is worse about what has happened is the breaches of our laws with impunity. We passed a Public Financial Management Act to govern the financial management of all covered entities. Covered entities are all government agencies, and under Section 102 of the PFM, particularly under interpretation, they define what a covered entity is. And says a covered entity refers to the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. It refers to constitutional bodies, and Bank of Ghana is a constitutional body. It refers to autonomous agencies, and Bank of Ghana is a constitutional autonomous agency. It talks about ministries, departments, and agencies. These are the institutions that are referred to as covered entities, which must respect and operate within the ambience of the Public Financial Management Act. So the Bank of Ghana is captured in there as a constitutional body and as an autonomous body. And as a matter of fact, the law provides that any time there is a conflict between the PFM and any other relevant legislation, the provisions of the PFM will prevail. Okay? Unless to the extent that it is inconsistent with the Constitution. So Bank of Ghana, even your law, your Bank of Ghana Act, is overridden by the PFM. And the PFM under Section 53 provides that nobody, public entity or covered entity, can write off public funds or abandon a claim owed to government without one seeking approval in Parliament by a resolution backed by a simple majority of the House. And you see, Senator, there's a reason why we provide this. If anybody can just be writing off government assets sitting on the books of a covered entity, what will happen is that, just like it has happened, You go and print money or you create credit and give it to your cronies. They go and put them in their bedrooms and you come and write them off. So you see Cocoa Board will call their friends and give them funny things and then they write them off. GMPC will just go and do some funny deals, they write them off. ECG, you see PDS and co have funny deals there, they write them off. Do you get it? You can't run a government like that. Even for a normal company, if you want to write off an asset of a company, you need a board approval. And even depending on the amount involved, the board may have to even call an extraordinary annual general meeting of shareholders, the owners, for them to approve it. The shareholders of Bank of Ghana is the people. And the people resides and the sovereignty resides in Parliament. That is why Section 53 says, go to the people and go and tell them that you want to write off this asset. Then we will ask you, Bank of Ghana, where did you get this 32 billion from? Because you don't have that kind of balance sheet. Your balance sheet is full of debts. Swaps, you can't even pay. Repos, you can't pay. Open market operations that you borrow money from the financial institutions in order to mop up excess liquidity, you cannot pay. In fact, you actually did a gold swap. You carried our gold and went and gave it to BIS for a tenure of 1 month. It's been 1 year. You cannot pay for that swap, and our gold is locked up at BIS. So we would have asked you, where in your balance sheet were you able to generate 32 billion to give to government? And government will explain to us what they used 32 billion to do. What was the original arrangement for the repayment of that 32 billion? And what is your basis for taking a haircut when everybody has refused a haircut? You explain to us. And if it makes sense, a decision will be taken by the House. You can't just sit in your house and say, I've written. And I'm very disappointed in my colleagues at Pricewaterhouse, Deloitte and Touch. Because you know that the Public Financial Management Act is actually the Bible for the audit of public financial institutions. And if you go and see a write-off of 32 billion, you would ask for the authority under which they are writing that 32 billion off. And you would have researched into the PFM to see that under Section 53, this can only happen by a resolution of Parliament backed by a simple majority. You would have requested for that. If you cannot get that, you will need to qualify the accounts because 32 billion is a material figure. And you would have had to express an opinion on that 32 billion infringement. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. And the governor is telling, I hear the last time Ken Oforiatta was saying on GTV that it's a technical loss. It's a technical theft. You should know that. That is a technical theft. 60 billion, you call it technical loss? You go and write off 32 billion? You call it technical loss? That is a technical theft. It's a technical theft. I am not sure he will allow such a loss at Data Bank or Enterprise Group. He will not. But okay, this is public funds, so you can call it whatever you want. Because I have told you long ago, these are financial engineers who only know how to destroy. So the governor of the Bank of Ghana, if I want to trace all the violations of our laws that this man has mutilated ever since he became governor, a day will break us. But on the score of just destroying this most important tree of life that we planted in 1967, a very important institution that we planted as a tree of life. And that tree of life, we know, anytime we had ailments of the economy, we take the fruit of that tree of life to cure it. When we have inflation as a disease, the fruit of life, we just need to go and pluck one at the Bank of Ghana and we'll cure the inflation. Interest rate hikes, No wonder Bank of Ghana now is now increasing interest rate because it knows what we do not know. It has pumped a lot of money into the economy through printing. But the way to cure that is the Bank of Ghana, which is the tree of life. Just the fruit from that tree of life. Depreciation of the currency. No wonder the city was misbehaving. But it is that tree of life we use. Today, that tree of life has collapsed. It's policy insolvent. Bank of Ghana, as a policy institution, is now policy insolvent.
Policy
So
insolvent.
How are you going to cure depreciation of the currency? How are we going to cure interest rates? The Bank of Ghana, under Addison, this is what you've done for us. So I therefore support 100% the call by my leader that Addison should bow out of that office.
Based on the violation of the laws.
He's caused enough harm by breaching our laws. You see, one of the funniest excuses I heard, Senna, was that if they had not done that, the economy would have collapsed. Bank of Ghana, yours is monetary policy and financial stability. Managing the economy and the fiscal is the executive through the finance minister. So the finance minister is struggling to pay monies. And you say that if you don't print money and give to the finance minister, the economy will collapse. But the finance minister is governed by a law called the Fiscal Responsibility Act that imposes a burden on him to observe the fiscal rule of 5% deficit. The finance minister looks at his law and says, hey, this 5%, I don't think I can do it under the circumstances. And goes to section 5 of the act and says that anytime there are emergencies and matters just like it happened with COVID, you can come to Parliament and suspend the fiscal rules. This man runs to Parliament for cover. Suspend the fiscal rules so that he's given a special dispensation to deal with the era of the COVID lawfully and fully protected by the Parliament of Ghana and the laws of our land. You also have your law, Bank of Ghana Act. How are you there? You throw your act away, you violate the law to support and help the man who has come to Parliament to cover himself. So, Keno Foreta is covered, you are naked. Senna, is there something right in the top there? Top there, is there something right there? You are killing yourself, hanging yourself, violating your laws with impunity to help somebody who has protected himself with the law. A man of full age, an adult, a governor of a central bank. This is your posture of how to save the economy. Senator, did they dissolve Parliament from 2020?
No, you're working.
We've been working.
Yeah.
That's the minister. Don't they know the way to Parliament? How many minutes does it take to ask your minister to appeal to Parliament for a special dispensation to help you help him better? But you don't respect us. You don't respect our laws. So as for you, you are autonomous body. Even the Supreme Court of Ghana respects the laws of Ghana. Even the president who appoints you comes to Parliament. As for you, you are lord unto yourself. You decide that you injure the country, you hurt the country, you violate the law, the laws of our country, you throw 70 billion negative reserve out, 60.8 billion losses, all in violation of the law, so that you can support somebody who has come to stay within the law. Senna, is somebody normal? Senna?
But, Honorable,
if this is your father, won't you be worried?
Of course, but I'm also then worried about the Parliament of Ghana, because you're thinking about what you do not deter, people will constantly do. And a lack of consequences leads to impunity. The person has violated the law over and over again, and nothing is done, nothing is said. Won't he just continue?
So this is the reason why I had a banter with Evans Spencer yesterday on your sister station. You see, when Parliament passes laws, Parliament does not administer the law. Otherwise, all petty thieves that are in court, we would have been hearing them in Parliament. When Parliament passes a law, it doesn't mean that Parliament becomes the policeman of the law and the Parliament becomes the adjudicator of the law. That is why we are one arm of government. So now, unfortunately, for criminal conduct, not even an individual can prosecute an individual or a public officer for criminality. It requires the Attorney General or at best the OSP. So why do people say when a public officer violates the law, then you want to look to Parliament to blame Parliament? Is Parliament a court of law? If somebody goes to steal bread, why don't you bring him to Parliament? Because Parliament passed the law. When somebody, now we are past LGBTQ, so if you catch people violating LGBTQ, you will bring the lesbians and the gays to Parliament because we passed the law? Then is that what you will do? We have passed the law. The police, the executive, the judiciary, it is now up to them to implement and prosecute. The Attorney General needed to issue an opinion on a write-off or abandonment of claim amounting to 32 billion Ghana cedis to inform any decision to write off. He is the one who can prosecute for criminal conduct of the Bank of Ghana.
Okay, so we're in the hands of the Attorney General.
Not Parliament. Parliament is not a court of law. So if every law that is breached, you say that why is Parliament watching on when they are breaching the laws, then you must as well bring all criminals and all thieves that you take to court, bring them to Parliament because we pass the laws. Is that what we are going to do? What will be the law, the work of the judiciary? You know, anytime they find convenience, and I told Evans Mensah, the ignorance is glaring. You see, if you do know that a prison officer doesn't catch thieves, they bring them to him. Do you know that?
Yes.
A prison officer, he doesn't go catching armed robbers, so they bring them to him for safekeeping after the court has pronounced. Is that not the case?
Yes.
Everybody has his role. And our constitution and our criminal jurisprudence is quite clear. But it is not in the place of Parliament to be trying a governor which is breaching his laws left, right, and center. We can only throw the shine. We can only throw the light on it. And when we throw the light, the appropriate bodies must be interested.
I love Radio Gold.
If they don't, and a new government comes, that's why we say criminal conduct does not expire. So please, those of them asking why is Parliament not doing, why Parliament is not a court of law? It doesn't mean that if Parliament has passed a law, it should go out and police its laws, and it should go out and adjudicate on its laws. There are other arms of government that are mandated to do that type of work. But when we see the wrong, we will throw the light, we will shine the light. And Bank of Ghana is too opaque and must be reformed to be more transparent and open to the people.
Let me read to you, because the Bank of Ghana published a whole explanation of the losses, and it is on. I'm reading from Ghana Web their explanation. Whereas all other stakeholders that participated in domestic debt exchange did not have principal haircuts, but rather had new instruments with new tenors and coupon structure, the BoG, which served as the loss absorber to the entire debt exchange program, a key requirement that allowed the government of Ghana to meet the threshold for the approval of the IMF program. As a result, the BoG had to take a 50% principal haircut on the total principal, which stood at 64.5 billion cedis at the time of the exchange. Consequently, BoG had new instruments with extended tenor and significantly reduced coupon. By applying the full requirement of IFRS 9, this means that from the principal alone, 50% haircut on the non-marketable amounted to a loss of 32.3 billion cedis. That's just a portion of the explanation they gave, that they had to take these losses as part of the arrangement.
You see, that is why we have lost in our country. In complying with whatever policy you think will help you get the IMF, you are a compliance institution. The chief compliance institution of financial sector in Ghana is the Bank of Ghana. You see, Senna, what they are saying is equivalent to me saying that I go to a shop to steal bread. And when you arrest me, you see that I'm very, very hungry. And I say, look, if I had not stolen this bread, I would have died. That's what they are saying. Look, haircut or no haircut, you have a law which says that you cannot write off or abandon a claim without parliamentary decision, without a parliamentary resolution. And the distance from your office to parliament is not a one-day journey. So you go to parliament and explain that this is the reason why you want to take a haircut. Then we'll ask all the appropriate questions, and if it makes sense, we are sound-minded people with our country at heart. If we need to approve it, we would approve it. Then you would have done it appropriately. You cannot say that in search of IMF, you violate our laws. And that is an excuse. In search of food because you will die of hunger, you go and steal somebody's bread. That's not what you do. So this cock and bull story is neither here nor there. Let me tell you, we are not worried about impairment. I am worried about the write-off. The write-off is not impairment. The write-off is abandoning the claim. Somebody owes you and you say, look, I'll forgive you, I won't pursue the claim. That is a write-off. That is the one we are against. That is against the law. But you see, impairment is just an accounting restatement of the value of a financial instrument on your books. And the IFRS 9 makes it very clear that financial instruments should be stated at the market price. Where a particular instrument is not traded on the market, in this case, the ones they have stated, you need to do a present value analysis to arrive at the value, given all the cash flows and the coupons that you use as a risk adjuster to be able to determine the present value of that asset. When you state that asset at its present value, the impairment is not a realized loss. It is just an accounting treatment. You have really not realized because you have not sold the asset. When you sell the asset, if you hold the asset to maturity and you go to collect your money, they will give you the face value of that asset. So you don't lose anything. And our laws are clear that a government asset can only disappear from the books only on disposal. In the absence of disposal, any other method requires approval, and the other method is a write-off. So when you have an asset being impaired because of IFRS 9, what you are simply saying that because of the changes in the tax rules and the contract terms have changed, the taxes are not going to be the same. The risk adjuster, in which case the discounting factor, which is the coupon, has changed. So if I decide to determine the value of the asset today, given all its cash flows and ramifications, it will not be the same as the value that I had on my book. The difference, if it is more, it's a surplus. It's not a realized surplus because you have not actually disposed of the asset. If it is less, it's an impairment. It's not a realized loss because you have not disposed of the asset. And every year, you restate that value depending on the dynamics and the market value. So that is our truth. We don't have a problem with that. The problem we have is the write-off, which is government. As a matter of fact, impairment, you have lost nothing really. Technically, you have lost nothing. You are just being prudent. You are just being cautious so that you take the hit in the event that it will happen. Okay? But when it comes to write-off, what you have said is that I am no more going to pursue that right. I am abandoning the claim. And the law is you cannot abandon a claim owed to government without recourse to parliament for parliamentary decision. Why is that difficult? You cannot say that because you wanted an IMF program. You want compliant with. So you go to parliament and say, we have taken a decision. In order to help government achieve the IMF program threshold, we need to come and get you to approve for us to write off some money. Let's ask all the questions we need to ask. Where did you get that money that you gave to government? If we realize that that money you gave to government is not even money, We will not allow you to write it off because it's not your money. It must be paid. It will occasion a contingent liability in your balance sheet. We will ask you, the person you gave the money to, what did he use it for? What was your final agreement with him to give him the money? Why is it that he has not paid? Why is it that he did not put the money into the use that you agreed? We may as well find out, after you gave them the 32 billion, they share the money and the money is sitting in their bedrooms. And you just want to pay off so that they don't account and pay for those monies. What about that? Then the president is every state institution, private entity, will just be writing off public assets.
Okay.
This is not a lawless country.
Okay.
And IMF itself knows that we are governed by laws. That is why when they were giving us the pressure to rein in fiscal dominance, we have to bend the law. So Bank of Ghana should stop this cock and bull story. They should stop this cock and bull story. If we had not done that, the economy will collapse. What we have done is worse than economy collapsing. Because the biggest policy tool for monetary policy and financial stability is Bank of Ghana. Today you are insolvent. How are you going to deal with those policies? Money that you have borrowed from the financial sector as part of your open market operating instrument, you have wasted that money. How are you going to give the money back to them? As we speak today, all our banks, their prudential reserves that you ask them to keep with you for a rainy day, you have wasted that money. If today there's crisis and they need to be given the money, where are you going to get it? It means that now you can only conduct monetary policy unless you print more money. And yet it is the printing of the money that has brought us where we are. How is that solving the economy from collapse? How is that?
Honorable.
Addison is the most reckless and lawless governor I've ever seen. You see, you collapse the financial sector. We tell you, hey, what you are doing has implications. Today, lack of confidence in the financial sector, okay, has resulted in a situation where in 1 year, 2022, we ended the year with 42% growth in currency outside of the banking sector. People withdrawing their money from the bank and keeping it under their pillows. This year, the year is, as of June, we're already doing 38.6% of growth in money outside of the banking sector. It means that in 1.5 years, money outside the banking sector has grown by close to 80%. What does that tell you? It means you have destroyed your key instrument for carrying out monetary policy, Bank of Ghana. You have destroyed the instrument, which is the financial sector, that you use to manage liquidity in the economy. So when you keep increasing policy rates, who are you deceiving? You increase policy rates so people can go and put their money in the bank and reduce the amount of money in circulation. Anytime you increase the policy rate, the evidence is that the people rather withdraw the money out of the bank and worsen the liquidity situation. When your amount of money in circulation grows by 57%, by a factor of 3, you have increased money supply by almost 160% in 1 year. How do you manage price development with these kinds of aggregate numbers? Quite clearly, you've lost it.
How about Adongo? We have to leave it here. And thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
It is my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Honorable Isaac Adongo is member of Parliament for BoG, Tanga Central, ranking member on Finance Committee. He said they are still working on formalizing it. We'll speak to